was prophesied. I start the sermon off today by asking you to think about a time that you have received hospitality. Perhaps you have been invited to fancy parties where they used the finest of china and they served fine wine and they had, it's a fancy party when they serve you little tiny pieces of food. Those are the kinds of parties where you have to get all dressed up. You might even agonize and second guess over what you should wear. Those are the kinds of parties where I glance over the buffet table and I inform Stephen what it is he should and should not eat based on what will end up on his nice tie. You might judge yourself harshly for thinking, I'm not intelligent enough to engage in the kind of small talk that's required at these gatherings. And usually those events are riddled with social expectations, so much so that I realize at the end of the evening, I failed to have very much fun at all. Now contrast that with a much more impromptu gathering of friends. Now these are people who know and love you, and they would never judge you if you just simply picked up a pizza on the way home from work and just grabbed whatever else was in the fridge. And perhaps they would even assist you by bringing a hodgepodge of other dishes with no preparation involved. And they would know to come dressed comfortably to your home, ready to talk, and of course to laugh. There are no pretenses, and there are few expectations other than just to show up and enjoy one another's company. Contrast that still with another situation. A surprise visit by a stranger. We don't get too excited about those kinds of visits, do we? If you are like me, you avoid all the door-to-door salespeople and Jehovah's Witnesses as much as I do. Now, my family, we're usually pretty casual around the house, but when a stranger knocks on the door, we look like trained Navy SEALs as we duck under the windows and we stealthily hide beside the door, and we pretend like we're not at home until they give up and go away. There's nothing worse than an unexpected visitor. I saw a really clever doormat that I'm going to have to get that read, "Text us when you get here. There's no need to involve the dogs." The dogs get all excited, you have to calm them down, and it's really hard to pretend like you're not at home when the dogs are giving you away. But one of you gave me a pro tip when I moved out here in the country. You said to me, "Honey, you better learn to get dressed as soon as you're out of bed, because you never know who's going to drop by." And I appreciated that heads up because I'm one who likes to linger a little bit over my breakfast and a second or third cup of coffee, and I do all that in my pajamas. And don't nobody need to be seeing that mess. And so this story about Abraham and Sarah could easily be about several things, but I want to point out that one of the main themes is that of hospitality. And it's just not any kind of hospitality, it's hospitality to the stranger. We hear that there are 3 men passing by in the heat of the day, and according to the custom of that time, it is the responsibility of the citizen to take care of strangers who are in your midst. Abraham doesn't just welcome them coolly, he shows elaborate hospitality. He ran to them, he bowed down to the ground, and he begged them to stay and to rest in the shade. He then brings them water and bread. And they obviously lingered long enough for his hospitality to get ever more extravagant, for he goes and kills a calf, and he has his servant prepare it and brings it to them along with curds and milk. It's quite different than how my family reacts to the stranger with our stop, drop, and hide maneuvers. It becomes quickly apparent that these aren't ordinary visitors, for they already know his wife's name, they call her by name, and then they predict that in due season, Sarah will have a son. And even though though she's not within sight of them, they know that she laughed when she heard this, and they call her out for her laughing. We are witnessing an interaction with humans and maybe some kind of divine presence who comes not only to enjoy the hospitality, but to offer an ancient birth announcement. Except this announcement isn't like the kind that we expect. It doesn't tell us when this will happen. And if we stop the story here, the reader is left with quite a bit of uncertainty. All we know is that this is going to take place at some point in the future in due season. This story reminds me of quite a couple of some New Testament stories. The first one is about entertaining angels unaware, which urges us to be generous with our hospitality, for we never know. It could be an angel in human form. But it also reminded me of Matthew 25, when the people asked, "Lord, when did we see you and do these things?" And Jesus replies, "Whatever you did or did not do to the least of these, you did or you did not do unto me." Immediately upon hearing these verses, I imagine all the times that I hid from the Jehovah's Witnesses. Surely Jesus nor his angels would come disguised as one of them. Perhaps it is because I'm a woman that I also think about Sarah's age and the physical condition that comes along with being a woman of a certain age. What she is describing is shorthand for all of us as post-menopause. She knows that she is past the point of fertility, and therefore she thinks this birth announcement is absolutely ludicrous, which also makes me think about those other stories of women who prayed and prayed to have babies, but they were considered barren. You remember the stories of Rebecca and Rachel, Hannah and Elizabeth. God has this way of hearing these women when they pray. First of all, perhaps it's over tears, as they realize that not bearing children puts them in a more vulnerable position in their family and society. And then those who are late in life, they hear about the possibility and they might laugh at it. In modern day obstetrics, sometimes women who have difficulty conceiving are diagnosed with what is called an inhospitable womb. Could you imagine going through issues with fertility and being told that your body itself is inhospitable? And then women who are nearing the end of their reproductive years and conceive also have this horrendous moniker ascribed to their pregnancy called a geriatric pregnancy. You can be 36 years old and be called a geriatric woman in obstetrics. Well, God has this unique way of taking these situations that otherwise would have been inhospitable and occupying them with possibility. God takes barren, hopeless situations and fills them with the divine presence. God blasts through the expectations of reproduction with the most geriatric pregnancy perhaps ever recorded. Therefore, we know through this story and others, nothing is too wonderful for our God. As Stephen and I approached a party, we realized that we were in an odd, rare situation. We had unintentionally arrived a few minutes early, and we pondered what to do. Perhaps we should just sit in the car for a few minutes so we don't disturb their last minutes of preparation, because we know how we are the last few minutes before our guests arrive, and we're running around still trying to get things ready. But as we sat there in the car, saw a couple of other cars pull up, and people began to get out and make their way to the door. And so we did the same thing. We got out, we grabbed the presents that we had brought, and we made our way up the walk to the front door. Now, you will understand this. The door to the house was open, the main door, but the storm door was closed, which I've learned is another sign of hospitality. Some of you all do that. It means I'm here and we can receive guests. That storm door being closed, but the main door being open is a sign to come in. A person appeared behind that glass, one that I didn't recognize. She saw us approaching and closed the door. I thought she was there to welcome us, but what she conveyed to us is that in fact we were not welcome. And Stephen and I were just really stunned by this. We stopped in our tracks, honestly, not quite knowing what to do. I sometimes think, dear church, without realizing it, we close the door unceremoniously on the divine Spirit. We get so caught up in being the church, I think we fail to open up the tent flaps, run with abandon, and bow down before God. I have come to realize over the years that God doesn't care if we are appropriately dressed, if we have our hair and makeup in place, or if we've gotten our house in order. God wants to come, sit in the shade with us, enjoy a cold glass of water in the heat of the day, and just break bread with us. God wants us to be present to that activity, not running around worried about if we're ready or not. The divine wants to tell us today to not be discouraged. And I have to admit that I wonder about our little local church. It's not unusual for me to awake in the dark hours of the morning, which I hear is common among women my age, as our hormones change. That sleep can be elusive. And you know, I think even Facebook is on to me. I searched for one pair of comfortable shoes, and now I'm getting ads for pills on how to deal with this extra roll of fat that I got as I got older, and some therapies that might make my skin retain some glow and elasticity. Next thing you know, they'll be sending me ads for burial plots and a vault. It's really giving me a complex, like maybe they talked to my doctor or something. I wish Facebook would just let me age with dignity and grace. But at any rate, when I'm up in the middle of the night unable to sleep, it's not unusual for the monkey mind to start chattering. And then I'll go through all my other issues and arrive at anxieties that I have about the church. Will we make our budget? Will we have enough of this or that? Are we serving our little children as well as we can? And are we leading them into a lifetime of faith? I wonder, how can we better serve our community? What we've done today is fantastic. Is that meeting their point of deepest need? And of course, because I'm a woman of a certain age and I tend to run a little hotter than everybody else, I wonder, will we ever get those AC units in the fellowship hall? I sometimes wonder about the lifespan of a church. 175 years, 76 years, is quite a long time. What will we look like at our 200th anniversary or years after that? I wonder, according to the story, have we reached church life menopause? Are we post-menopausal? This affects the men as well in the life of the church. Will more fruit come from the womb of the church? Will we give birth to anything new? God must enjoy these thoughts and these conversations that we have. You see, we think we're hiding out of sight, laughing about the dream of ushering in new life into an old church, but God knows the thoughts that are on our hearts. And it must intrigue God to witness this not only in me, but also in you and in churches all over our country. I imagine as God overhears us, God is thinking, North Middletown Christian Church, go ahead, laugh now, but just you wait. In due season, I will allow you to usher in new and wonderful life. You shall serve and you shall bless. You might be old, dear church, but you got a whole lot of life left in you. In due season. In due season. We wish we could control it. We wish we could cause it to happen, to usher it in ourselves. And admittedly, God might be a little encouraged to see that we're trying to live into a new season of life, so long as, and here's the caution, that we do not mistake our enthusiasm and our desire for actions and timing with God's perfect vision for us. Now, we learned last week in the Garden of Eden that humans have a lot of power, but humans also have limitations. We were allowed to create, and human was allowed to name. And that carries with it a lot of power. But we also learned that there is this realm of understanding beyond us that we do not have access to. We try to access it, and that is called disobedience. But that is the realm of God, the realm of infinite possibilities, the realm of things that we cannot even imagine. Our job is to welcome the divine into our presence and enjoy the good news that God does not give up on us. I think you know this. I come from a musical family. Everybody in my family could play an instrument or two and sing. Everyone that is, except for Doug Moon, my father. He couldn't play anything, and he said the only thing he could play is hard to get. He had a wicked sense of humor to make up for his lack of musical skills, and as I developed as a musician and as a singer, he went to countless vocal recitals and choral concerts. And true to his comedic nature, if a woman of large stature would sing a solo, he would pretend that the program was over and begin to make noises like he was leaving. You know the old adage, it ain't over until the fat leaves. It's a really rude saying, but my father was just kind of crude in his humor, and he always got us tickled in the middle of the concert. But that one sticks with us over the years. I prefer a similar saying, the words of Yogi Berra, it ain't over until it's over. And you know how we know it's not over? Because we're still here. From last week's story in the Garden of Eden, we know that God breathed life into us. And as long as we have the breath of life, we are still living. That's not just a medical diagnosis, that is a spiritual reality. Be we young and fertile, menopausal or in transition, or post-menopause. I don't really know where we are in the life of the church. I only know that we need to be prepared to open up the tent flaps and welcome God's holy vision for us. For we know from our history that nothing is too wonderful for our God. Thanks be to God.